What's going on, everyone? This is Propaganda Report. I'm Brad Binkley. Just a heads up to those of you in the chats. Well, hold on. Let me get my music squared away. All right. That should be good. Should be off by now. Okay. I'm about to do a presentation, and I'm going to have so many screens up that I won't be able to see what's going on in the chats. What's up, Triggers? Until after I do the presentation. So I will go back and look at those after I go through this. So be sure and check me out, by the way, my appearance on Inverted World Live with Shane Cashman last night. It was a lot of fun. It's a great show, and I was honored to be on it, so check that out. A lot of great information, and I love the show that he's doing over there. So, on to the subject at hand. A few months ago, James O'Keefe was sent a video from someone inside the government, he says, of the inside of Jeffrey Epstein's house on Sex Island that showed a chalkboard inside of Epstein's library that had a bunch of words on it. I'm going to tell you what most of those words are a reference to. And I don't mean speculate. I'm going to show you evidence of exactly what Epstein or whoever wrote those words on that chalkboard were referring to, which are mostly the work of Epstein's favorite scientist, according to Epstein. That's what he calls the guy, which is a man who Epstein has funded or did fund from the 90s until 2018, and that is Harvard researcher Martin Nowak. He's German, it's spelled N-O-W-A-K, or he's Austrian, excuse me. And also, it's a reference to, which is kind of one and the same, but what Epstein claimed to be researching at Harvard in 2005 and 2006 when he was a Harvard visiting fellow, and I will show you the documentation, but first let's take a look at the chalkboard in question. Where are we here? All right. This is the Epstein chalkboard on screen here. It's kind of hard to see. O'Keefe has a big watermark across there, but what you see on the chalkboard are some of these words I'm certain of, others a little less certain. But over here, starting on, if you can see my cursor, on the left, you see the word power underlined. And then you see to the left of power with a little dash pointing that direction, you see Fin, F-I-N, and then you see P-H-Y-S, and then you see intellectual, and then you see political. Fin means financial. P-H-Y-S means physical. So we have financial, physical, intellectual, political, power. These are all references to types of power. And then to the right of power, you see deception. And then underneath deception, you see the words mirror and face. And again, I'm going to show you directly what these mean because this is all research, studies, experimentation that was being done at Harvard University and by other scientists at edge.org, which is a publication for elite scientists that you had to be invited to write and discuss. They used to have billionaire dinners funded by Jeffrey Epstein, this magazine was. Edge Foundation, some people know it as. This type of work was going on there. And then above deception, you see what appears to be the word plants, and then I think truth, and then I think below truth is wealthy, and I'm not sure what the word to the right of wealthy says, but then on the right side of the chalkboard, you see the word appear, exclamation point. And then below that, you see music / and I'm 95% sure that says brain. I think there's two references to brain there. Music / brain, I think it was written, and then they kind of wrote it to the side, and I'll show you the evidence of why I think that. I'm not sure what the two words below that are, and then I am certain what these words are down here. Time delay. That's time delay. It's a direct reference to a scientific research publication. And down here, this is dark brain. It's not dank brain, it's dark brain. I know one of two things that is a reference to, and I will show them all to you. Okay. Now, let me give you some background real quick, because to know what these things are a reference to, you need to know a little bit about Martin Novick. And this guy, Martin, I'm not going to put him on screen. I don't have a site for him pulled up. I do have some of his publications pulled up. But he is a research professor at Harvard University who, as I said, Epstein called his favorite scientist. Epstein funded this guy. He funded his work from the 90s until 2018, which, yes, that's before and after Epstein was first convicted. So Novick was accepting money from someone who he knew was a sex criminal. He had no problem with that. Now, what Novick believes, Martin, is like kind of the foundation of all of the things that he researches, is he believes that the primary driver of evolution, he believes that there are some natural processes involved, but he believes the primary driver of it is cooperation. And that's in all species on Earth. Biological processes plus cooperation. And therefore, for the human species to evolve and get better, cooperation must be maximized, and defection, as he calls it in his research, must be minimized. And thus, he studied the various strategies for gaining compliance, which he tested using different prisoner dilemma matrix games, the way he describes it. And if you want to get a sense of his work, among the compliance gaining strategies he's tested are punishing the dissenters, using reputational influence, including fabricating someone's reputation in order to gain trust, using time constraint pressure, and using various techniques of deception. There's many, many more as well. He was consulted on how to coerce people into taking the vaccine during COVID, just to give you an idea of who this guy is. So this is the type of person they went to on how do we get people to just take the jab and shut up already. These are the things that he was studying under the guise of the evolution of cooperation. It is this research that Epstein funded, and if you look at all of the publications by Harvard University themselves, actually, Epstein was directing his research pretty much. He was his boss. Because after Epstein got out of prison the first time, Novak continued taking money from Epstein to do this research, but he just hid it. He hid where the source of the money was coming from, and he also kept secret all of the various visits that Epstein kept making to the Harvard University Program for Evolutionary Dynamics Center, which Novick was the head of. And he was the head of it because Epstein made him the head of it in 2003 when the program at Harvard was created with a $6.5 million funding grant from Jeffrey Epstein, with a caveat that his favorite scientist, Novick, who would be studying these things that Epstein directed him to study, cooperation, compliance gaining, he was the head of this program. Epstein had an office in this program, and that is why he kept his funding a secret and he kept his visits a secret after he got out of prison and was a convicted sex offender the first time. All of these things are, well, not all of them, but much of the activities that Epstein was doing at Harvard University are revealed in a publication that was posted or uploaded onto Harvard's website in 2020 titled Report Concerning Jeffrey Epstein's Connections to Harvard University. And I'm going to show you some of that here in a sec. So in that document, let me get that on screen. All right. You see here at the side, this is Harvard's website. Report Concerning the Jeffrey Epstein Connections to Harvard. And find my other place here. So Epstein was a visiting fellow at Harvard University in 2005 and 6, which is not something he was at all qualified to be. This is a program that was designed for graduate students who were hoping, as they're going for their PhD, were hoping to get accepted to this program and be able to use the university's resources to do independent research. Not for 52-year-old creeps looking for young, underage girls, perhaps. Nevertheless, Epstein was accepted into this program twice because he gave a $6.5 million donation to create this facility and program, and the guy who he had put at the head of this program had influence at the university because of him, and thus he then helped Epstein get in and get accepted to this program he had no business getting accepted to. In the application to get into this program, those who wanted to get accepted had to state what their research objective is, and this is going to connect us back to the chalkboard. I'm going to read. It's a little wordy, and I'm just going to read to you both of his applications because he was in the program for 2 years. His objective, as you see on screen, he says he wishes to study the reasons behind group behavior, such as social prosthetic systems, and their relationship to a changing environment. That is, other people. Other people can act as prosthetics insofar as they augment our cognitive abilities and help us to regulate our emotions and thereby essentially serve as extensions of ourselves. I wish to understand how the brain both allows such relationships to develop and how those relationships in turn take advantage of our key properties of the brain. So there's our first reference to the brain. We're going to get even more direct to the chalkboard brain references here. But he then goes on to say that in conducting this research, he is going to need the resources he needs. If the theory can be tested rigorously, I would need access to a functional magnetic resonance imaging. He needs an MRI machine. He needs to test the thermal heat transfers in his subjects' brains as he's testing cooperation strategies, which he confirms that desire to do so in his second application for this program, because he had to say why he needed another year in the program. And he couldn't just say, I want to find young chicks to grope. So he had to say this for his 2006 application. He said, my studies are not complete as I am working on the intersection between evolutionary dynamics, social, statistical mechanics, game theory, computational biology, and synthetic biology, blah, 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 in an attempt to discover the mathematical underpinnings of competition versus cooperation. Included in this attempt to formalize the efficiencies of social prosthetic systems. And then first attempts have been to analogize it to heat and energy transfers across variable resistance nodule networks. That's the MRI, studying people's brains. That's neuroscience, gobble that he's saying there. But then this connects directly to the chalkboard. I am further attempting to find a derivation of power. I'm sure I said that wrong. Of power in an ecological social system that would include variables for reputation, trust, or awe, and the inherent strategically diverse tactics of deception. I'll say that again. In attempting to further find a derivation of power in an ecological social system that would include variables for reputation, trust, or awe, and the inherent strategically diverse tactics of deception. And he's going to do this work in part with with Novick, as you see down there at the bottom. Back to the chalkboard. So we go back to the words power. Financial, physical, intellectual, political, deception. So these are all ways of obtaining power. The origins of where does power come from? Let's get it down to the neuroscience, biological, mathematical level, using an MRI machine, and what are the various strategies for getting it, including deception. This is exactly what he's talking about. And this stuff was and still is the focus of this guy, Martin Novick's work. This is why he's one of the 3 guys specifically who need to be subpoenaed who probably never will. Because they loved Epstein. Epstein loved them. They took money from him before and after. They continued to support him publicly after he got out the first time. But that is what Epstein is talking about here. Now let's get down to, I think, mirror and face next. Let me find my place in my notes here. Heat energy. Okay. All right. So all of this stuff, this mumbo jumbo that boils down to how do we gain cooperation and minimize dissent or defectors on a mass scale using these various strategies of time restraints, manipulation. This is what the Edge found to further evolution for these elites. This is what this Edge Foundation that I mentioned earlier, they talked about all the time at what's called billionaire dinners. And at one of these talks, because they would all go there and they would give these talks, and this Martin Novick gave this talk at one of the billionaire dinners. Let me get that on screen. All right, so up here, I told you, there he is. There's that guy right there. That's Epstein's favorite scientist. Very heavy on the eyebrows. The evolution of cooperation. This is what the Harvard program for evolutionary dynamics focused on the most, and this is what they called compliance gaining. And again, this was a consultant on how to get people to just take the jab and shut the F up during COVID. Now, the words on the chalkboard, I pointed out mirror and face. This is where mirror and face comes in. And he talks about this stuff in a lot of his other work as well. Where did they go there? All right. So mirror and face is a reference to what he's talking about in this speech, where he's discussing successfully getting cooperation in a repeated prisoner dilemma game experiment using a tit-for-tat strategy of holding up a mirror to the other person by mirroring the response that they did in the previous game experiment. Now, they did this with people, but they also did it with computer models. And here it says in his speech, he says, the 3-line program that works to win the prisoner's dilemma game. It works in the following way, he says. I start with cooperation. And he's talking about when there's already been a game played previously. Multiple prisoner dilemma game. I start with cooperation, and then I do whatever you did in the last round. So we play the repeated prisoner's dilemma. I will always begin with cooperation and then do what you do. Essentially, I am holding up a mirror, and you are playing yourself. You may not notice. It was very surprising that this was the winning strategy. So this idea of holding up a mirror and having the person see themselves in their opponent in order to gain the trust of the person that they might not even see as an opponent is where this mirror and face idea comes in. And later on in his speech, he quotes somebody else saying, as my friend David Haig at Harvard put it nicely, for direct reciprocity, which is what this prisoner's dilemma game he's referring to is this strategy. There's indirect and direct reciprocity and a couple of other types that he talks about in his research. But this is a direct reciprocity, the mirror and the face. For direct reciprocity, you need a face. For indirect, you need a name. And I find this beautiful because there's a lot in a face. A lot can be read from facial features. A big part of our brain is there to recognize faces. So we recognize with whom we interact. That is what the mirror and the face is referencing on this chalkboard. I have no doubt about that. It's long been studied in social sciences. They've done many studies that mirroring people's behavior and their language and their words is a way to make them like you. It is a way to make them trust you more because they see themselves in you. You are like them. They like you because they like themselves. Even if they hate themselves, they like people who are like themselves. And that is what this is a reference to. How do we build trust? By holding a mirror to the face of those we want to trust us so they see their face in our responses. And then therefore we can, it's like pace and leading also. It's a very convoluted, over-the-top, neuroscientific way of discussing all that nonsense. Nevertheless, moving on to the next one. Okay, appear. So the plants reference here, I believe, I'm not as certain about this one, but I believe the plants reference on the chalkboard is he studied, Noack did, and many of the people at Edge, when it comes to the evolution of cooperation, all kinds of ecological systems, including plants, and how they cooperate in order to evolve and expand. And I don't know exactly why that's in there, but I believe that it's as opposed to maybe planting people in things, although it could be a reference to that. I think it might be an ecological reference. Truth. I have a speculation about what truth and the wealthy. I think that could all be about trust, ways of building, fabricating trust. But I don't have direct things to point to, so I'm not going to go into those. Appear. What appear is this is a reference to the origin of things, and that is what the foundation of Noack's research is, which he talks a lot about on this edge.org. And it's the concept of the universe appears as though it were designed. And Novick's theory, which I stated a little bit earlier, it's not a complete rejection of Darwin's theory of evolution. His theory is that natural processes, as described by Darwin, are part of the evolutionary process, but that the main driver is cooperation. Therefore, to evolve, cooperation among species must be obtained. And non-cooperation or defectors must be minimized. And that is kind of what's going on here. Of course, who decides all that? These elites decide they need to force everybody else to cooperate with the direction that they think is best. And these are all the ways that they can gain trust and power over others. Financial, intellectual, physical, political. Deception seems to be a primary one. Mirror-to-face deception. Appear to be like them and they will like you, which is what we see everywhere. That's probably the best way to think of the mirror-to-face. Appear to be like them and they will like you. Edward Bernays used to talk about it. You segment society off and you put leaders in front of the different groups who the groups they think are like them. And those people will become their leaders. In reality, those people are working for the powers that be, if you will, and might not have the best interest. It's a deception, as it says here on the chalkboard. It's a really overly scientific way of talking about a lot of Edward Bernays stuff, I believe here. And, you deceive people into cooperating using these various strategies and like plants do, and boom, evolution will appear in the direction that they would like it. That was a little speculation on my part, that little putting the dots together there. But now let's go to music and brain. Is that what I got next? Yeah, music and brain. Time delay is the most obvious one, which people probably have not figured out yet. But I did figure that one out for 100% certain. I'll do that one last. Music and brain. So I've shown this document in a lot of other videos. I'm going to show it again. This is the most important Jeffrey Epstein document that most people have never seen in its entirety anyway. So this is the plea letter on screen here, written by Alan Dershowitz in 2007. That is what got Jeffrey Epstein that infamous sweetheart deal. Most corrupt of all time, sweetheart deal. And in this document, Dershowitz lists a bunch of powerful institutions and powerful scientists of the elites whom Epstein funded the work of as a way to intimidate the federal district, the prosecution, into submission, into accepting what little of a deal that they can get. Because if they're to take it to trial, they're going to be facing some of the most powerful institutions and people in the world. And it worked. They accepted the deal. And here's a paragraph in that plea letter where it's talking about the people who Epstein funded the work of. By the way, Bill Clinton's mentioned in this. There's 5 names specifically mentioned when it comes to people. Bill Clinton's one of them. These 4 scientists here: Martin Novak, Martin Seligman, Lawrence Krauss, and Roger Schnack. And Bill Clinton earlier, only 5 names specifically. These people helped Epstein get that deal. And it makes sense that Martin Novak would help Epstein get the deal because he was funding his entire career, and that's why he hid where the money came from, and that's why he kept all of Epstein's stuff secret afterwards until it was exposed. And these other 2 guys, 2 of them, Roger Schnack and Lawrence Krauss, also continued supporting and continued taking money from Epstein after he got out the first time. Now, we don't know whether Martin Seligman did or not because nobody's ever asked him about his proven court-documented relationship or that his program was founded at UPenn by Epstein. But if you want to see more about that, hear more about that, then go watch my video on youtube.com/Brad Binkley or Rumble/The Prop Report that is titled "The Most Important Epstein Document Reveals Who Should Be Subpoenaed," and I give you a little bit more about those. Also talk about this stuff on Inverted World with Shane Cashman. You can check that out as well. But nevertheless, you see here at the bottom where it's talking about institutions funded by Epstein include, and it lists a bunch of them: Harvard, Penn State, blah, 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 MIT. The very last one mentioned, Harvard Medical School's Institute for Music and Brain Science. That is the music, that is a direct reference to the chalkboard. Music and brain. Back to the chalkboard. Music and brain, right there. Now I don't know. Now I know music is definitely a tool puts us in a trance. I know Hitler used to put music outside to agitate people, to get people, and we see mosh pits, we see people go in trances. Music is a very powerful thing. We all know that. I don't know the music research that this is a direct reference to, but I know that there is music research. I guarantee you at edge.org, there's a bunch of discussions about this. I just haven't dove deep into that yet. Next, these next 2 are really the time and delay. I find these to be the most interesting personally. Get rid of that. Don't need that anymore. Okay, time delay. So, time delay is a phrase that is mentioned in a study published by Martin Novak. It's mentioned, I don't know if you can see the top of my screen here, but it's mentioned like 38 times. Actually, I got the wrong thing up there. Hold on. Sorry. No, you can't see it up there. You can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's mentioned like it's mentioned that this entire publication that he did talks about time delay and the effect that time delays have on people's decision-making ability in the context of gaining cooperation from them. And the study is called Social Heuristics Shape Intuitive Cooperation. And you go back here to, where's that? You go back to this edge.org evolution of cooperation discussion that Martin Novak gave. And he says in this discussion, this elite billionaires dinner where he gave this talk, he says, so there's one new result we have. Timing seems to be very important. You ask people to play a one-shot situation. If they decide quickly, they go for cooperation. If they take time to decide, they go for defection. If you force them to make a decision to be quick, they are more cooperative. If you force them to make a decision to be quick, they are more cooperative. If you force them to think, they are more defection. That is what that entire study is about. And that is what that means on the chalkboard. Gaining cooperation using time constraints. And I think we can all relate to that. Finally, so this one, the dark brain, back to the chalkboard. All right, that's dark brain. It's not dank brain. It's dark brain. Now, this is one of two things, this reference. Going back to this study by this guy Epstein funded, which they discuss this all the time at the Edge Foundation. This says here, it has been found that impairing the function of the right lateral prefrontal cortex, a brain region associated with deliberation and control, increases giving in a unilateral money transfer, while amplifying this region decreases giving. That individuals with little self-control are more likely to make sacrifices for the benefit of their romantic partners. That people, by default, project a cooperative frame onto neutrality. Frame prisoner dilemma games. Basically, by damaging part of this portion of the brain, you can make people you can make them comply easier. And this part of the brain, from what I've been able to research, it affects decision making, and it is sometimes referred to as the dark brain. He's either talking about that, or he's talking about research that, so Lawrence Cross, another guy who was on that document, that plea letter, who he took money from, that helped him get that deal. Let me show you that. Lawrence Cross, another one of Epstein's scientists who he funded the career of, his claim to fame, one of them, is that he theorized the existence of dark energy throughout the universe, something that was later confirmed, and the people who confirmed it won a Nobel Prize. But that is his thing. There's dark energy that is actually most of the universe, that we don't know what it is or what it does. And the universe is often compared to the brain because of the striking similarities in the structure, and also because of the, what they say, like 60 to 80% of the brain circuits that do not respond to external stimuli, that we really do not know what it's doing as part of the unconscious mind. So there's that parallel in the brain and the universe. The other explanation of what Epstein's talking about on that chalkboard is the dark brain is similar to the dark energy in the universe. We don't really know what those circuits are doing. And my guess is, how can we figure that out for the purpose of manipulating people's brains to make it easier to get them to comply and to stop the defectors so we can further evolution in the direction that we elites would like it to go. So you can see here, here's people talking about, with a nod towards our astronomy colleagues, our group came to call this intrinsic activity the brain's dark energy. Okay, so a large fraction of our overall activity. Actually, let me show you guys that and put it up there. A large fraction of the overall activity, from 60 to 80% of all energy used by the brain, occurs in circuits unrelated to external events. With a nod towards our astronomy colleagues, our group came to call this the intrinsic activity of the brain's dark energy, a reference to the unseen energy that also represents the mass of most of the universe. I actually now think that this might be more likely what Epstein's chalkboard is talking about. You see here another publication, The Dark Matter of the Brain, Electrical Synapses, Omnipresent and Yet Hardly Explained. Back to the chalkboard again. And those, I believe, I'm certain for most of them, but those, I believe, are the explanation for Epstein's chalkboard. That is going to be the most hard evidence from Epstein's mouth himself and from his bought and paid for scientists at the Edge Foundation, Harvard University, and Arizona State University, providing the explanation. What's up, Stoner? What's up, D's Laughs? It is trippy. Yeah, it is a late night. I wanted to get this out because I've been thinking about it, so I want to go ahead and put it down. Thank you guys for tuning in. What's up, Triggered? All right, yeah, that's all I wanted to get out there today. I just wanted to get out of my brain. Wanted to get it out of the dark matter of my dark brain. Propaganda Report, Brad Binkley, Propaganda Fight, Patreon.com. YouTube.com/propaganda report. You can find all my links in bio for ways to help the show. Share this with friends. Give me a 5-star review on any podcast platform you listen on. It's always greatly appreciated. Thanks for hanging out in the chat. You can always smash that like and leave a donation on the YouTube, Rumble, chats. That's always appreciated as well. And again, check out my appearance on Inverted World with Shane Cashman last night. We talked about Epstein. Not this stuff specifically, but a little bit. But we talked about who should be subpoenaed in the real Epstein files. Oh, thank you for the Red Bull and Cannabis Fund. Thank you, Stoner. I appreciate that. It's a good way to go out with a donation for that Red Bull and Cannabis Fund. Okay, guys. PropagandaFight.com. We will talk to you guys tomorrow. Well, I guess it would be later today based on the time that it is now. You guys have a fantastic rest of y'all's day. See y'all later.